kind of an interesting time, obviously, as you all know. We're still not sure what exactly is going to progress moving forward. We do know that at this time, some companies are starting to either push back internship start dates, or even so far I haven't heard of a lot of our companies rescinding offers, which is great, but it still could happen. We know that. And so we wanted just to sort of throw out a few ideas of things that you can be doing if for some reason you don't have an internship yet, or the one that you thought you had falls through. We also do have a resource on our website, which I'll show you at the end, that you can actually go to too for some of these tips, as well as there are some sample emails. So if you're in sort of a situation where you haven't heard yet, but you know your offer hasn't been rescinded, but you're not really getting a lot of information, there's a sort of sample mock-up email that you can use, or other different types of scenarios. So just as you're getting started, I think one of the things, of course, that sort of is the low-hanging fruit, if you will, is to take some classes. Unfortunately, as you know, those are for our campus all online, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have to do our classes either. I know a lot of students will spend summers doing classes at local community colleges. Most of those are still going to be offering virtual classes, so that would be another way to get some of those either gen eds or intro classes maybe out of the way. Now, a couple of you are, like I know Mario, in your situation, you are a little bit further along in your academic career, so there may not be as many options for you as far as things that are counting towards your actual academic. So I would say another thing would be looking at projects, events. Now, certainly these are things that maybe you help a nonprofit organization. Maybe you get involved with something in your towns where you're living right now that either as an event that's trying to happen virtually. Yeah, it's not directly related to your major. Absolutely, in all cases, I get that. But still, you're going to be able to build those transferable skills in some cases that will show that you did something. And I think most of our employers moving forward are going to be a little bit more understanding of students who maybe don't have an internship this summer because of everything that's going on. I think, though, that they will be very impressed with those students who have found something to be able to continue building skills. So that certainly is still something to consider. Volunteering, and I'll talk more about virtual volunteers. Hopefully, though, our stay-at-home orders will be lifted at some point this summer, and so there might be other ways to get involved and volunteer. Again, not necessarily something related to your major, but being able to build sort of that thought leadership, which employers often look for. So that would be coming up with a new process for food distribution at a food pantry. So the process part and the creativity part is what employers are going to look for, not necessarily that a food pantry is directly related to your field, but a process engineer comes up with new ways of doing things, for example. There are some companies that will still be open to job shadows, probably in a less organized fashion, more so in a, hey, you get a connection or you get a contact and you reach out to them and say, now that COVID is lifted, the stay-at-home order is lifted, can I follow you around? So maybe it's July, maybe it's August, and you follow a scientist or an engineer around for a day, get a feel for what they're doing. Again, it shows that initiative. It shows that you are going out trying to find something, and hopefully it'll help you make some good connections and contacts. So when you are looking for that next internship or that full-time job, you'll already have built up a pretty decent relationship. So it's kind of like going back to what some students did, maybe even their first year. They're trying to build those job shadows. So pulling in some of those pieces, it's still going to be valuable. Maybe not quite as valuable as if you had an in-person, on-site, full summer internship, but still you're going to be able to build both contacts and also learn a little bit more about the field. Also, some labs will probably open before some of the other bigger company opportunities. So there might be an opportunity to get involved in a research or even still like a research experience for undergrad, something that's a little more structured at this point. A lot of those are kind of in a wait and see pattern. So I would say if that's something you're interested in doing, reach out to some faculty and say, hey, I know we're in a wait and see, but if something were to open, I'm going to be available and would love to connect with you to do some research in your lab. All that being said, if none of that works out, there are also part-time jobs. Again, not always directly related to the field, but where you can build those transferable skills, things like your communication skills, where again, you can show, hey, this is the initiative I took this summer because of everything that was happening. Of course, teamwork is important in all of our worlds. Safety, adhering to rules, those types of transferable skills are important in any science or engineering role. Leadership is another piece, I think, that especially if you haven't had an opportunity yet to be involved in a student organization or something where you've had a leadership role, a lot of times you can do that in a part-time job. Even if you're working as a barista somewhere, being able to train new baristas can be one way to build up those leadership and problem-solving skills as well. Computer skills we're finding more and more importance in both chemistry and chemical engineering right now, so that could definitely be something, and I'll show you in a second some virtual ways to do that too. And of course, organization. I would say networking is also going to be really, really crucial during this time. If you can sort of present it as like, I'm here to help, I'm here to commiserate with you, reaching out to alums that you perhaps knew, or also connecting with alums that you don't know. This is something that's more of a longer term planning. So usually we encourage students not to do networking when you're in the midst of your job search. So you're planting those seeds for later on down the road, so when things do open up. So if you say you have an internship right now, but you're still kind of on sketchy terms, you're not sure if it's going to come through, I would absolutely recommend starting that networking process. So reaching out to alums, reaching out to potential employers, anybody that you might have met previously at a career fair or something like that that you would be interested in. Certainly making those connections, and not making the connections to say, hey, do you have any jobs open, or are you on a hiring freeze at your company? But just reaching out to connect, to maybe commiserate together. If it's somebody that you knew, just update each other. What's going on in your life? What's going on in your world? And again, these are sort of like you're planting the seeds. And with planting seeds, if you ever have done any gardening or anything like that, it takes a while for that growth to come, for that development to come. And that's really what networking is. It's not about a used car salesman thing, I'm going to get you, I'm going to use you for right now. It's more of a longer term process. But I think networking, particularly right now with everything going on with COVID, can be really, really helpful. There are a few other things that you can just do, basic stuff like read about potential jobs. If you're not completely 100% sure this is exactly what I want to do, or this is the industry I want to go into after I graduate, spend a little bit of time every week just reading. Do a general search online, see if there are videos on YouTube. It feels like a waste of time, but you're actually doing something that might help you when things do open up to say, like, I know this is what I want to pursue. Informational interviewing. Have you guys heard of informational interviewing at all? Is that something you're familiar with? Yes, no, no, okay. So informational interviewing is basically something that you direct. So whereas a normal job interview is being directed by the employer, an informational interview is something that you're going to direct. So it's where you have an opportunity to sort of lead the conversation, to validate, for example, is this my career choice? So it's taking it to the next step with that networking that you're doing. So, okay, I've got this connection. Ask, hey, can I just schedule a 15-minute phone call with you to learn more about your job? I'm trying to take advantage of this time of everybody being quarantined or stay-at-home orders to learn a little bit more about what I might be interested in. And to be honest, people love to be able to coach and talk normally. Oh, wow, here's somebody who might be following in my footsteps. That's exciting. But even more so right now, people are craving, I think, a way to be able to give back. And so if you're reaching out to someone who's at a company who's in a job that you think sounds interesting, say, I'm trying to validate my career choice. I'm trying to decide if this is the industry or the type of field that I really want to go into. Could I set up a 15-minute conversation with you and learn more about your job? Figure out a little bit more about what you have enjoyed doing or what you don't enjoy doing or what a typical day looks like. And it's a great way for you to be able to say, wow, yep, that is exactly what I want to do. It's also a great way for you to start narrowing your list of employers. You might be talking to an alum or somebody who says, oh, this is a terrible place to work. Well, that might help you, of course, take it with a grain of salt, especially right now. People are stressed and frustrated and probably not all loving their employer as much as they did 3 months ago. But it's still something that you can hear from. Like if somebody's saying, wow, yes, things are frustrating and I'm having to work remotely, but my company's really doing a good job taking care of me. That might help you to say, well, this wasn't necessarily a company that I had valued before, but maybe it's somebody that I should consider. Another thing with informational interviews is you can just make that context, find out what's going on, get current information about the industry or that field or that role even specifically. And then certainly get some leads. So leads might be things, again, that you're planting the seeds for the longer term, perhaps leading to a job when things open up, or maybe it's just leading to another informational interview. That's okay too, because even leading to another informational interview, we have had several students, particularly during times of like recession and so forth, where reaching out to one person has led to reaching out to another person, has led to reaching out to somebody who actually can do something as a hiring manager. So really, the informational interviewing, in theory, is about you learning. It's about you exploring and discovering what options are out there. But often the payoffs are, and hey, here, let me hire you. I really had a great conversation with you. Another thing that can be sort of a benefit from an informational interview, especially if you haven't had internships before, is sort of learning the lingo. And when you go into an interview, if you can talk about SOPs, and know what SOPs are, that's going to make you a higher candidate, a higher sought after candidate. Now, if you've had an internship where you did SOPs, you probably already understand what that is, but particularly if you've not had an opportunity to have an internship yet, just learning more about the field by talking to people in the field can be very beneficial. I also think, like I said, it's a little bit about planting seeds. So longer term, if you're making a connection, you're coming across really organized, and structured, and being able to say, hey, here's my list of questions, you have a good conversation, you probably even follow up with a thank you note after that interview, expressing appreciation for their time. That's going to make a really positive impact. And then when you apply for a job later on down the road, or you apply for an internship later on down the road, they're going to remember you, and actually that person might even become an advocate for you. So if they're not the hiring manager, they can go to the person who is the hiring manager and say, hey, I think this person's pretty sharp. They reached out to me, they were staying connected, they took advantage of the time, and so they have that positive impression. So informational interviews can be really helpful. And finally, it just gives you a little more confidence. I mean, I will absolutely admit that the first couple of times you reach out to do an informational interview, it's going to feel really awkward. It's easier if you start with somebody that you kind of know or that you've met before and just say, hey, I want to talk to you about your job and I want to learn more about your field. Who are your competitors? What do you like? What's a typical day? Any of those types of questions. And I've got a handout I will send out to everybody after this as well. But the other thing is it gives you confidence, because most likely it's going to be a two-way interview and they're going to ask you some questions about yourself. What are you thinking about? What do you think you want to do? Why do you want to do that? And so you'll be able to build confidence and learn a little bit more about how to articulate your career interests and your goals and so forth to someone who's a professional, so that when you do get back into the swing of things and get to that real life interview, you'll be able to do that. So there's some virtual things that you can do as well. So certainly this sort of first part I've been talking about networking and learning more about the field and doing different ways to do that, as well as the taking classes and so forth. But there's some virtual things that you can engage in too. There's a company called Parker Dewey that does virtual micro internships. Most of the time, or I think through Parker Dewey, they're always paid. And a lot of those, to be honest, are going to be more the data science, more the computer type things. But just the other day I was on there and they were looking, there was a consumer products company that was looking for someone to do, again, some data science, but something that would more be a modeling type project. So a chemical engineer who's interested in consumer products would be perfect for that role. So you can go to parkerdewey.com, you would log in with your Illinois information and sort of scan through. Now, it's constantly being updated. So even if there's nothing really exciting there today, most likely there will be, in another couple of days. So it's actual project work, things that you can do virtually, and you still get paid. And of course, you can put those on your resume. Coursera is another great place. So I have a lot of students who will say, I really need this job, or I'm interested in this job, but it requires an advanced level of Python. I only have basic Python, or I need to have this additional skill. So Coursera is a great place where you can learn some of those skills. Normally, I would tell students it's not that great to put safety training or safety classes, or things like that on your resume. But I think during this time, again, showing that initiative that you've gone sort of above and beyond, to put some things through Coursera, to take some full-fledged classes and learn some skills that maybe you wouldn't have had an opportunity to do otherwise. And a lot of those are free. So all you really need is that internet connection, which we're all on already. Another thing that a lot of our employers have found valuable is learning a new language. Prior to COVID-19, of course, we were very global when it comes to companies, and a lot of students will do even short-term or longer-term expatriate assignments in another country. Now, if you can speak a language from another country, that can also be very valuable. And I know many of our students already do, but if there's something that maybe you don't speak, but you're interested in learning more, use this time to do that. A lot of students have also asked about creating blogs or even a website or a podcast. And we've had some of our alums do some really cool things lately, actually, because they're home and they're working remotely. So this could be something that you could do as well. So maybe you create a podcast where you have other chemical engineers, or you reach out to professional chemical engineers, people who aren't even in school anymore. Again, it's about that networking and making the contacts, but you have sort of a reason, like, hey, I have this weekly podcast. I'd love to have people help people learn about the field of chemical engineering. Virtually volunteering is another option, and I mentioned that a little bit earlier. There are a couple of websites here, which I will again forward this because I imagine some of it you can't see completely, but DoSomething.org has a website, as well as one through the state of Illinois, where there are companies and organizations, nonprofits that need help and have projects that people can even do virtually. So again, it's something that you can show initiative, put on your resume, and potentially even make some contacts. And then finally, there are a number of organizations who have always wanted to get their social media up and running and haven't had an opportunity to do so. So if you are on social media right now, and that's something that you feel like you're good at Instagram or you're good at Twitter, I would volunteer. See if there's a company, especially if there's a company that's maybe a nonprofit or an organization in your field who wants to up their social media presence, volunteering, offering to do some social media for them. Again, you're going to be able to learn a lot more about that organization and sort of the back end of things and how things work. But it's also something that you can show initiative. You can put on your resume as, hey, I did these projects. So basically, a lot of different things sort of centered around the topics of learning, just to continue learning about your field or what types of jobs you might want to be in. And that's really one of the big things that we get out of internships, in addition to the actual hands-on experience. But then also networking, so making connections, whether it's through an informational interview, job shadow type unofficially, or reaching out to people to offer your assistance, or even things like actual experiences where a virtual micro internship like Parker Dewey can be something that you get involved in. So that's basically what we've got. We're still taking appointments through Handshake. So if you want to make either a Zoom or a phone call appointment with our office, you can definitely do that through your Handshake account.